Bang! These knives. I'm Jared. My lovely wife Kara's busy. And today we are talking about the Cjrb Maileah. Designed by Swags. They used to work at Smoky Mountain Knife Works. That's, I think, where she got popular from in the knife community. But Lavender Pants 86 actually gifted this to Kara. And Kara has been carrying it like crazy, using it like crazy. She absolutely loves it. And
Excuse me.
Oh no. Here we go.
What are you doing? You didn't let me think enough. You said you were doing a video.
Do you want to talk about it?
I do.
Okay.
I like it.
Well, why don't you talk about it then?
Okay. It's my knife because Lavender Pants is the best. And he got it for me. And that's really cool. But where shall I start? We'll start with the good and the bads. All right, the goods let's start with action. For one, these thumb studs, super snappy. Okay, they're like, the Detent is perfect amount of resistance, not too hard, not too soft. And these thumb studs are comfortable, so it just rockets out with little to no effort. Front flipper is also relatively easy to use. There is a bit of bad about the front flipper, but I will get to that soon because a lot of those issues seem to have improved a lot just from use.
You got used to it?
I don't know what it is. I'll explain it on the bad side.
Okay.
Okay, so goods as far as aesthetics go, it's my favorite shape, blade. I love downward tips. I'm not a huge red and black person, but in this instance, I like it just because we don't have a lot of red, and it's just a touch of red, so it doesn't bother me too much, which I like. Okay, so moving on from the looks, let's talk about some of the functionality. The liner is pretty good access to the liner. You can see it's visible right there. I've definitely had slightly more comfortable liners, but this is definitely not uncomfortable. It's not even close to being uncomfortable. Another thing about some of the functionality here is the clip. Clip is a deep carry clip, which on a knife this small is okay for the female pockets. Normally, deep carry clips make a knife sit lower than intended, which can actually be a negative when you have small pockets. But in this instance, it's actually really nice because the knife is already pretty short. Okay, let's talk about we'll move into some of the actual usage as part of functionality. So something that is interesting is a lot of you men think that this knife is like, oh, let's hold it like this. Oh, it's so small. You just do this and this or this. But when you're me, you can literally get a full grip on it. And it's actually super, super, super comfortable like that. Like my finger locks right into place here. My thumb hits the jimping here. Boom. Literally no issues whatsoever. And not only is there no issues holding it like a normal knife, you see 4 fingers, but it's actually extremely comfortable. Like, you're not getting this out of my hand. It's not coming out because of the way it hooks around and the way it swells in the back. Perfect. And along with those great ergonomics comes the actual ability to use it. So I can either use it in this position with my thumb on the jimping, or I could curl my 3 fingers this way and put a finger on top. Now, I don't typically do this. Like when Jared does that, his finger reaches like all the way up here, so he has something he's going to say about that, but my hand doesn't reach that far, so I can't comment on it. The furthest I can reach with my finger is about in the middle of the blade. It sure is a nice little dip, so it is still comfortable, but no jimping, of course. The other way you can do it is like a pinch grip kind of right around the thumb studs, which you can almost use the thumb studs to anchor your fingers on there for basically like a more secure grip. Again, I don't really do that. I go for the full 4-finger grip, which you're not going to get on this if you're a dude. Anyway, the actual cutting of the knife has been really good. I think I pretty much have only used it on plastic straps and cardboard, both of which it glided through. I did a backwards grip to pop a strap, and even with the thick or the dramatic dip right here, my hand still sinks into that really nicely, and it was nice and easy to pop straps. I don't know, was this sharpened at all?
Sharpened, yeah.
Okay, so that's why it was probably pretty good to use here. But the geometry also assisted in that.
I'll talk about the sharpening in a minute.
Yeah, it really, in my slightly less uneducated opinion compared to Jared's, it seems like the blade geometry was very much assisting me in cutting through cardboard. I feel like it's good for that. Not to mention the tip is nice and grabby since it has that downward facing tip. I'm eternally grateful to Lavender Pants. That's pretty much all I have to say about the knife. I do want to get into like just a couple bad things, and there's really only two of them. One is that the jimping on the front flipper here, if you look closely here, it stops right here, and then you have this flat angle and then no jimping on top. This part really should have had jimps on it, because what happens is when you're doing this, your thumb kind of slips on that corner there, and it can be a little painful. However, that feeling of it jamming right into the side of my nail there seems to have stopped. And I don't know if that's just because the knife has broken in, detent's broken in, and it is a lot easier to use, because it seriously was bothering me before. And it's really not anymore. But it is a negative to keep in mind if you get a new one. It possibly might have a break-in period. The only other downfall, I would say, is that I just wish, I personally do not like this shaping here. This is a personal negative. I personally do not like this shaping here on the blade. I wish that it had been more of a Wharncliffe kind of worn sheep's foot kind of combo. I'm not really sure the point of this, except maybe to do like a really long pinch grip up here if you've got a bigger hand. So
it's to put reinforcement behind the tip.
Okay, but I personally would have preferred a more extreme curve here, or even if it was going to be like this, if it would have kind of been lower down. I don't know. It's just a personal preference.
I know what you mean. Personal
preference. It's just not as appealing to me.
You mean visual or useful?
Both, actually.
Okay.
I don't know. This upward belly combined with that brings the tip into a slightly less useful position. I prefer pretty much something close to a hawksbill without the recurve of a hawksbill. So a Wharncliffe.
Yeah.
You know, Wharncliffe, a sheep's foot.
Like this, you mean?
Like if you take the, yes, that's probably the most extreme end of it. And then, you know, you take something like the Kaiser Sheepdog would be a really good example of what I'm talking about right here. So if you look at the difference between the two, instead of exaggerating with this whole deal here, it just drops. Still has a recurve or a belly, but it's not as extreme of a belly. I prefer this. That's all I'm trying to say.
To me, that looks the same.
No, it does not.
Okay.
No, look, this tip sticks out more this direction. This one comes down straighter.
Oh, I see.
This one has more of a belly.
Elongated. I see what you
Yes,
mean. Yeah,
yes, which makes it sit slightly up.
Right.
You take something again. Here's another example, like the fire ant.
More elongated.
I like that better. Yeah. And then also on the Wharncliffe end of things, rather than the sheep's foot, I prefer that. So you can see it's a personal preference. I just think it's better for grabbing onto materials. This is the other Swags knife, the Kaiser Swayback. This is the Kaiser Sheepdog. You guys know what this is. And then this is the Kaiser Fire Ant. So actually, these are all Kaisers. Can you tell I like Kaiser? Anyway.
Except for the Cjrb.
Oh, whoops. I was thinking this was Kaiser too for a second, because the other Swags one is a Kaiser.
I thought you were just talking about the comparisons.
No. All the comparisons are Kaisers. I just forgot this was a Cjrb. But yeah, other than the colors not being my favorite, and the my nitpick about the blade shape and the slightly weird jimping, I like. Those are all nitpicky things.
Well, from a guy's perspective now, and we'll talk a little bit about sharpening here in a second.
Yeah, so from a guy's perspective.
Well,
so.
I just mean a bigger hand. It is a very small knife, so I can only get, I can get 3 fingers on there, but I'm really pushing my finger up there. So when I use the knife, I actually like the way this tip is, because it gives me a lot of reinforcement behind my draw cuts. And you know, using your draw cuts like that, I find that this tip is pretty acute. If you really look at the way it is, I mean, it is pretty acute, so you actually do get lots of really good draw cuts. You know, and you can push your finger right on there and get a lot of leverage down. And then slicing with it, I did use it a little bit. I used it, I guess, for like a partial day, really cutting with it. And it does go through material pretty easily. I mean, it does have relatively good geometry for its size, but because of the cramped handle for me, I'm mostly using my 3 back fingers like that, and then using these 2 as a pinch, or, you know, like kind of just pulling like this and, you know, slicing stuff exactly like that through materials. Now, sharpening it. This has the AARPM 9 steel. So after using it, you know, I wasn't really impressed with its edge retention. It wasn't really cutting through paper very good, and it really wasn't that much use. So it really should have went through the paper a little bit better. I will say though, it cuts very well. The geometry just goes through material very well. But stropping it, after I stropped it though, just a few passes on the strop brought the edge right back. I mean, incredibly quick. And I've noticed that across, you know, the board with the AARPM 9 steel. I'm going to do a video about just that steel here in the near future. But aside from that, I did also sharpen it. I used my aluminum oxide stones, which just some new ones that I have. They also go on a fixed angled system. I just freehanded on them. I ended on an 800 grit stone. I think I went from 400 grit to 800 grit, sharpened up really nicely. Very nice edge. I'll show some pictures of the edge here in a moment. But yeah, it sharpened up really nicely, and I was very happy with the way it's sharpened, and it takes a very, very keen edge. The blade stock thickness is between 90 and 100 thousandths thick, so it isn't a very thick blade stock, that's actually pretty nice, especially for such a small knife like this. And this one was also pretty thin, right around 15 thousandths behind the edge. So very nice geometry for such a small knife like this. I do like the way this tip is. I get a lot of leverage in my cuts. I do mostly do pinch cuts, you know, slicing like this, like that. And the action is amazing on this little knife. I definitely find this very fidgety and just very smooth. It's running on ceramic bearings with a ceramic detent. You do an easy reverse flick. The detent is well tuned. And then even though it's so compact, you can easily find that thumb stud. This thumb stud is nice and high, so you can easily find it and get to it. And I like the style of thumb stud it is, with the rings around the top for the grip. And then unlocking it, the detent's right there, so it's nice and early, so you're almost always past it when you unlock it, and you can easily slap it shut. Now, you do have to watch out for the back right here, not to hold it, because you'll go to unlock it, and your finger will catch it, and it won't be able to unlock, so you got to move your finger out of the way, get it like that, slap it shut. Or you can also just let it rotate by actually, you know, controlling it right there. The detent is nice and crisp, as you can hear. And then front flipping it or top flipping it, I find very, very easy. It's you kind of just get it right here in the middle, you know, instead of going all the way up to the top, which you can also do. But I kind of just get it right here in the middle. Pow! Very easy to break that detent. Very nice. And yeah, it's definitely very, very fidgety. The access to the lock bar is really nice to get to. So it's just a little small, you know, for me. So this would be like a fifth pocket knife or a secondary carry for sure, especially to pull out in places where I'm just doing, you know, 1 or 2 cuts, cutting a string, cutting a strap, cutting a box open, something like that, something where I don't need to pull out a full-size knife. But all in all, I do like the knife a lot. I think it's a really good little EDC knife, especially for people that need a secondary or a smaller knife, or for you know, people that don't need a full-size knife for whatever they do. And with the geometry, the way it cuts so good, and the fact that it maintains the edge not meaning like the edge retention, but meaning you can maintain it very easily by stropping it, and you can keep it going for a long time in between sharpenings because it strops so good. And with that, it makes it to where somebody with minimal sharpening experience can keep up with the blade. Now, you're going to have to do it quite often, but it will keep bringing it back and back and back, so that's awesome. Now, if I was going to say anything bad, oh yeah, also there is a lanyard hole. It's hidden right there in the back. So, you know, this would be a knife that would probably be good with a lanyard hole. Or, I mean, sorry, a lanyard. One, it would look good with the colors. And two, you know, it's a small knife. So, and it does sit very deep in the pocket. And then also that clip stays pretty much out of the way. They could have recessed it in. If I was going to say anything bad, I don't like little hardware. I do think they could have recessed the clip in there. I do like that they used flat screws, but they could have recessed it in. But all in all, this thing is definitely a good little knife. Not very many bad things on it. Sharpening was very easy with the sharpening choil the way it is. I did not like the factory edge, though. I will say that the factory edge was not a good edge in my opinion, but it probably could have been used. That's probably why it wasn't very sharp. But other than that, I just mean it didn't seem like it was that great of a factory edge. But either way, you know, no problem when you can just sharpen it up. So all in all, I think it is a great knife. Thank you, Lavender Pants. I love you guys. Peace.